Date with a Debut is recorded and produced on Awabakal Country, and I pay my respects to all elders past and present and extend that to any First Nations people tuning in. Always was, always will be, Aboriginal land. On with the show. Welcome to Date with a Debut, a podcast about debut authors, their incredible books, and their journey to publication. If you're looking for a new author to discover or writing inspiration for your own story and you don't know where to start, this is the place to be. I'm Nick Wasiliev, host of the show, and I'm delighted to welcome another debut author in today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, jump online and give us a thumbs up, a 5-star review. It really helps the show out. If you also want to hear episodes when they drop, be sure to subscribe to Words and Nerds, or you can subscribe to Date with a Debut on Podbean to hear the latest episodes as they drop. Want to support the show more? You can also subscribe to my Patreon in the description to get early access to episodes, book reviews, recommendations, and a whole lot more. Wherever you are listening, thank you for listening to us and supporting the Australian book industry. You can also find any books mentioned in today's podcast down in the description. Before the end of 2024, we had a bunch of exciting debuts that we missed out on in our last series. So today, I'm joined by Deborah Pike, an author, lecturer, and teacher originally from Perth, but now based on the Central Coast. She majored in English and philosophy at the University of Western Australia before attaining a scholarship for a PhD in English at the University of Sydney, and is an award-winning teacher, being the recipient of an Australian Government Award for University Teaching. We're here today to discuss her fictional debut, The Players, published by Fremantle Press, which you can get a copy of right now down in the description. We will discuss some mild spoilers, so I recommend you grab a copy now, or at least very soon. I started off by asking Deborah about her writing journey, and how the book was inspired with fragments drafted from her many travels. This episode was recorded on Awabakal Country. Deborah, welcome to Date with a Debut.
Thanks, Nick. I'm coming to you from Awabakal Country. And I'm, delighted to be here. Absolutely delighted.
It's so nice to have you here, and it's so nice to talk about your beautiful book, The Players, which for everyone who is on YouTube, I'm holding up a copy. Lovely cover, by the way. Shout out the cover. It's absolutely stunning. Before we talk about this beautiful book, though, I did want to start by poking you a little bit about your writing process, if I can, because in researching and Googling and stalking you on the internet, I found out, that you mention in your bio that this book was kind of inspired by fragments kind of drafted and put together across your many travels. You're windswept and interesting. You've done some traveling, you've done some exploring, and that you had, I love that the quote that you had, which was, and then suddenly the characters appeared and wouldn't stop talking until I pinned them to the page. Given this book is comprised of very, very small chapters spread across many, many characters over the course of, over a decade. Tell me about the assembly of this book, because it sounds incredibly complex.
I think some of that complexity is because it's a collection of different fragments that I wrote over many years in lots of very small moments. So just during my travels, I would hear voices of different characters, and I knew that I wanted to capture them somehow. And in the first instance, they were just amusing or curious, but then they got more and more insistent, and then I sort of became inhabited by these characters, and they were often inspired by different spaces and places. And then in a way I had to join them up. It's funny how you began saying that, I'm a bit windswept. Yeah, I grew up in Perth, which is one of the windiest cities in the world. I do love the wind. I love the way that everything can just get blown away. It's very much the case that the writing was initially born of just my various peregrinations and travels. And I traveled because of study, because of work, because of various whims, occasional romances, mostly just out of a kind of chronic, endless restlessness that is my soul. There you go. I've answered your question.
No, nailed it. I think it's
nailed it.
It's
okay.
It kind of really hits. It hits the spot, and it hits that kind of I think, often, as much as, books become their own thing, they're also a product of an author and someone who has created something and had a life journey. Also, appreciate the shout out. I think this is actually the first book I've had on the show which is based in part in Western Australia, but proud WA author in the midst here, even though you now are out on the Central Coast. And you teamed up with Fremantle Press, I believe, to create this book. And Fremantle Press, they're in the big, in independent publishing, they've got some big hitters. They've had some really great books come out of that house. Tell me a little bit about that experience and also about that writing community in WA. I know, obviously, of course, you're based on the CC now, but that place probably still holds a close place in your heart.
Yeah, it really does. Definitely Western Australia. I wanted most of it to be set in Western Australia. I grew up obviously there, but I do think it's important that we hear stories from Western Australia, and the people I know there are intensely creative, and there's such a lovely, lively and supportive literary community there, community of writers there. I had a wonderful time, a couple of visits to the Catherine Susanna Pritchard Writers Centre in the hills of Perth. It was where the great Australian author Catherine Susanna Pritchard lived for many years and, ran her communist newspaper and wrote her amazing books, beautiful, rich books. In fact, I love Haxby's Circus, one of her stories, actually books about a circus. So yes, West Australia has been really important, and I'm thrilled that Fremantle Press agreed to publish the book. You're absolutely right. They discovered authors such as Sally Morgan, Kim Scott, Gail Jones, Tim Winton, and others. And now we've got the very successful Holden Shepherd, who's taking the world by storm.
And, I love that boy.
Yeah, lovely, and such a great writer. And all of these authors are quite incredible. So it's amazing to be published by Fremantle Press. They were my third attempt at getting published, and I think they were right, because they foster West Australian stories and West Australian storytelling. And I think it is easy to miss stories from the West when you're in the East. And we always used to make the joke growing up in Perth that on the national weather, the weather person would just stand over Western Australia and sort of talk about everyone in the East. Anyway, so yes, it's a lovely, blustery, fresh, bracing, interesting, dry, salty, lush place, Western Australia, and very diverse. So yeah, I wanted to set it there, or at least half of it there. Yeah,
it's fantastic, and it's the actual. I think a good, it's such a melting pot of people, and I'm not surprised that there are so many creatives, whether they be authors or even musicians for that matter, with the music school there that come out of that part of the world, because I think it's a very, it's built, the actual city of Perth and WA is built around, there's so many different industries that come together. It's a place that draws people from all around the world in. That's kind of the environment that it's become, and I love it every time I go there, because it's just, you kind of feel that sense of energy and a warm. It's very much a warm reflection of the many diverse voices there, and it's great that books are being set there. And that brings us to this book, to The Players. You told me before we started recording that you have listened to a couple of episodes, so you know what's coming, and that is the classic elevator pitch. I am in an elevator. I'm going up some floors. You have a 1-minute pitch. What is The Players about?
Okay, so The Players is a novel about a group of young amateur actors, many of whom begin as university students, who come together to put on a play one summer, the French play The Marriage of Figaro by Pierre Beaumarchais. And it traces their journeys as they put on the play. They stage the play, and then it follows their lives in over roughly 10 years as they go their separate ways after the play across the globe. So we have our main character, one of the main characters, if you like, Veronica, who's the daughter of a Czech immigrant, who is the first in her family to attend university, who is in the play. Her boyfriend, the ambitious and somewhat wealthy Sebastian. There's Cassandra, or Cassie, who is a bit of a histrionic person. There's Gloria, originally a refugee from Timor-Leste, who is studying teaching. There's Joshua, a labourer in the orchard, who we meet, and Felix, who is the director, an exchange student from Germany. So the reader, goes on their journeys and ends up all over the world. It's also about the way in which the play affects them. And so that experience which brings them together also shapes, to some extent, their destinies and life choices. I think that was over a minute, but hey.
Ding! We've arrived. It's
good. It's time. Yes.
Yeah, it's again another example of highlighting kind of the melting pot of people that come together, because these are an incredibly diverse troupe of characters. But before we actually talk about them, I think it's important to actually reference the play in question, performed by the players itself, before we kind of dive in there. The Marriage of Figaro. For those who kind of are not who are listening, who are not very familiar, it's a story from 1778. There's a couple of different versions of it, because it was a controversial play when it came out. It's the story of these servants, Figaro and Susanna, who kind of, I guess in a very brief summary, in an act of 5 plays, 5 acts rather, they marry to kind of foil this the plot of this philandering count who's their employer. And it's, I guess the best way to describe it, it's a mess. It's a play that has lessons about fidelity, about loyalty, about love, but there's also kind of a bit of a subtext about class and
Very
privilege, and abuse of privilege. First of all, tell me about your actual specific relationship with this play, but also how it starts to intertwine with the stories in the players.
It's also revolution is a big theme in the play, overthrowing the oppressive aristocratic power structures. So some argue that it actually foresaw the French Revolution as a play, which was considered quite inflammatory. Sorry, I'm just grabbing.
Yes, it was very controversial. It was a controversial play.
A little pencil to just make a note there. So the question is, the play, how does the play work in the novel, really, is what you're asking me. Is that right? Yeah. I think, it's a very famous play in France. Most students have to study it for the equivalent of their year 11, I think, and which they generally complain a lot about. And I saw the play in Paris at the Théâtre du Marais, I think. There was only a cast of 4 or 5 in it, and they kept swapping roles, and it was very, very funny. It's a very funny, naughty play, and it's very clever. It's also about wit, about how, even if you're socially disempowered or in a kind of lower down the rung in terms of the social hierarchy, if you're cunning and clever, and you've got a certain spunk, then you can turn the tables around. So that's one of the themes of the play. So I loved it when I saw it in French, and then I also saw it many, many years ago at the Sydney Opera House at I think it's called the Playhouse, the theatre underneath, and that was a very traditional production in full costume. I also saw a couple of Opera Australia versions of the Mozart opera of it. It's just a lovely, almost structurally perfect play, I think. And I was interested in the way, the kind of historical resonances, the time that play was produced and put on. So popular that 3 people got crushed in the crowd to get a ticket. So people died trying to move over Taylor Swift, his Pierre Beaumarchais. So hugely popular. It had a long run at the Comédie Française in Paris and elsewhere. But I was interested in how that connected with the First Fleet's invasion of Australia, those sorts of dates, the kind of the Enlightenment philosophy as well around that, around exploration, invasion, colonization, and that this play about revolution is happening on the other side of the world. And then the various kinds of reverberations. It's just some of those themes through the stories of the various characters. So whether it's something to do with class and Joshua's disadvantaged story and background, or Sebastian's privilege and what he does with that, or seeming disadvantage that's advantage, all kinds of things like that. Obviously, the story of Gloria was interesting to me too, and
yes,
that, yeah. So I wanted to sort of explore all of that, and the way in which the various themes of the play can weave themselves into the characters' stories, into their backgrounds, but also into the story of Australia without trying to sound too lofty. The characters are in the novel are typecast in the play. So the two romantic leads are who you might expect, and the edgier comedic characters are who you might expect, etc. So they're typecast by the director because they fit their roles so well. But I was also interested in the way in which, once these characters are given their roles, how they inhabit them, and then how they then live with them. I mean, actors take on roles all the time. I do believe it can be a challenge throwing them off, for example. And I was interested in how having been these characters influence these characters in the novel for their life, like role playing. Well, we're given this role. Do we fight against it? Do we go with it? Do we enjoy it? Do we? Is it a kind of lie or a mask, the role we're given, or are we? So I realize I'm getting quite complex here, but I suppose
it's a complex question. It's a complex question, and it's good you mentioned this kind of like how the characters kind of do get typecast, because I do think there's a really notable section very early on in the book when they start reading the lines, and Veronica kind of makes a note about how intoxicating it is, how she's finding becoming Suzanne. Spoiler: she's Suzanne. She's the kind of one of the lovers in that story, and the idea of becoming someone else. And there's an idea of kind of the whole, the cliche of life imitating art, because these particular individuals are handed particular roles. And I think now's a great time to talk about this troupe of characters. And normally I like, this is kind of the part of this pod where I do kind of dive into one or two characters, but it's quite difficult in this instance because you have such a great makeshift troupe of so many contrasting viewpoints. Of course, you've got Felix, you've got Veronica, Sebastian, who very much, particularly in the early stages of the book, fits the stereotype of our very rich, spoilt boy who gets attacked by a goose. I'm sorry, I still find that quite funny that happened. And then there's obviously, of course, the complex love triangle that kind of comes in there with Cassie, and then the characters of Josh and Gloria. And I don't know why, I just found myself, and it might be a good question about other reactions you've had to the book. I found myself drawn to Josh quite a bit, particularly at the start of the book, because he's one of, he's someone that really stands out amongst this group of characters. He has had a much more difficult path, spent some time in juvie, had run-ins with the law, and he now works at this orchard where they start practicing because they get kicked out of their practice space because someone was found smoking, naughty, so they have to practice in this orchard. What I love deeply, I'm just going to shower you with compliments straight off the bat here. What I love deeply about these is that you've nailed these deeply subjective viewpoints. We change from character to character in every chapter, and what it does, it helps paint a tapestry for the reader of different viewpoints about the play, and not just the play, but all of the characters behind the scenes in the play. I don't even know where to go with this question. Just tell me about this incredible troupe, because
well, I think I was drawn to the idea of representing a multiplicity. So some readers love that multiplicity, and they can contain it and keep those balls juggling in their head as they read. I find other readers are craving just a sole narrator and they want more done for them in the book. And this book doesn't do that. It just says, here we are. This is a snapshot of different consciousnesses. I love modernist literature that explores perspective. It moves away from any idea of an objective truth or one true story, and we just get pure point of view, pure perspective. I was interested in doing something like that. So I wanted to capture that. I really wanted to capture the contrast between different points of view and to see how they clang and chime and harmonize and disharmonize, and I wanted to sort of that clang and that calamity, that cacophony. I wanted to capture it. It was just what I really wanted to do in the book, and there are other ways of thinking about it rather than musically, as a kind of weaving of different voices. I suppose that's something that I wonder about. Like we live these existence that we're given, and what does that actually mean, and what might it mean to be someone else, and why aren't I someone else? But maybe I am. Maybe we're all multiple. I'm getting
I think it's
complicated with these answers, Nick.
I know. Look, I mean, it's a complicated question because it's a complicated book. So it's, it's kind of, it kind of comes through there. But I love this part, particularly, the different subjective viewpoints. It shows, I think it's very accurate that humans themselves can sometimes, we can enjoy things together, but also we have our own different experiences and look at particular contexts in different ways. We can sometimes be silos. We can sometimes look, one person might see one night as one of the greatest nights they've ever seen, and one person, they might have stuff going on. They might have
That's
external
precisely
pressures.
The best moment
that
of someone's
is interesting.
life will coincide with somebody's most horrendous moment in their life. And how do we get our heads around that? Well, we don't really, I don't think. But art is a great way to just explore it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I also love particularly that you've actually structured this book as well, like the 5-act play, like the original play. We have the build up in the orchard, we've got the play itself, and then kind of 3 sections that documents the years afterwards around new roles, the foreign self, which is, I think, particularly interesting part. It's one of the longest sections in the book, and then these new selves that kind of brings this story to a close. And this is kind of really where the world spanning journey really comes to life after we have this particular moment in the play. First of all, what was it like bringing these places to the page? Because we traveled to Cambridge, we traveled to Paris, we traveled to Timor-Leste, we traveled to all around the place. But also, it's not just what I'm interested about is not just bringing these places to life, but what they do to these characters. What does the place do?
Well, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit and go back to your question about West Australian stories. Certainly growing up in Perth, you have a sense that you're in the most isolated city in the world. Whether or not that's geographically true, I don't know, but everyone says that.
It is.
And it is, okay.
It is.
So you have the sense of you really do have the sense of being off the beaten track. And it's actually a very large city. It's like whatever, almost 3 million now. I'm not quite sure. Like it's actually a major hub and with a lot going on. So it's not this sleepy backwater of a country town, yet there's that sense of it. And so most people I knew, anyone who wanted to do anything really left. You either go east or you go overseas. Most people actually just go overseas. Wherever, in any part of the world, really. Of course, there's the great magnet of Europe and the mother country, England, inverted commas. But most people left. And I found from my friends in Sydney, it wasn't the same mass exodus after school or after university or even after studying for a trade or doing whatever it was you learnt how to do. Then you go and do it elsewhere. But there's a real sense that life is and was elsewhere, that everything's happening somewhere else. I hope Perth people don't get cross with me for saying this. It's probably not quite that case anymore. There's a lot happening there. So So I wanted to capture what that whole map might look like from coming together and then spinning apart. So that's why they all end up in different parts as well, because that's also what happened. So each character ends up somewhere different because they're either returning home, or they're going back to family, or they're just wanting to test themselves and test their limits. I think a change of place is great for testing a character. How does the character cope with whatever, a new language, a new culture? What do they learn without their social and cultural coordinates? Who are we? Who do we become? Who might we become? And likewise for those other characters such as Felix and Gloria who go home, what is that process like? And so both movements, whether it's a return or a kind of journey outward, like an adventure, or to kind of learn something, are about identity, building an identity, learning about oneself, but also, maybe one of the challenges of travel and inhabiting a new place is that we actually bring ourselves. And, in a sense, we imagine that we're somewhere else and somewhere beautiful, exciting, or even intrepid, and that will be different, that will automatically be a mirror for our own transformation. And often enough, it isn't always. It's the same old stuff in a very different context can replay itself out in a space that is alien or different. So I wanted to, the possibilities for narrative is so rich. Of course, I love writing about place. I've mostly been to most of the places I write about, maybe not all of them. So, and I love to capture place as a kind of activator for narrative possibility and mood and atmosphere. And so that, as a West Australian, that is something I think would be relatively common. Obviously, it's a privilege to be able to travel. Not everyone can, but all that happens in that is a small thing I wanted to explore in the novel.
Just a small thing, I know, but it is such a it's good that there's a particular thing in there that I really want to zero in on, because I think it's boiling it down to the crux of the story really brilliantly, is that this book is about a fantastic, detailed and nuanced examination of the search for meaning, and that it is universal, no matter your background. Though, of course, where you are in the hierarchy certainly can play an impact about that somewhat. I think there's a great, these characters and these are very much distracted by each other in the process of creating this play, which I will say, that lack of realization about them not actually realizing what the play is about and what it means, I think kind of sits really is just kind of, it's so interesting that kind of sits over the heads of the reader while you're kind of reading this story. I love that there was a line from Cassie again a bit earlier on in the story where she kind of talks about, I think I might expire at the weight of my desire. Great line, by the way. Shout out a nice line that ties up beautifully like that in an almost poetic sense. This is a book which kind of sees a lot of the themes of the play, very much manifest, but it comes at a time, a lot of these protagonists characters are in a similar place. They're leaving the world of education. They're discovering themselves, particularly also if they have particular dreams and viewpoints. Like Sebastian has a very particular vision about how he wants to live. As someone who has grown up in a world of privilege. And then, you get hit with the realities of the first few years of being in the workforce, and entering the workforce for the first time. The class elements come into that, the opportunities come into that, the willingness to make change in yourself come into that. It's a challenging time of your life. And I mean, I've got no comment to add here. I've actually got no question to say. It's just that I love that in these themes that kind of sit within this play and with these characters and the meaning around it, you've picked the perfect time in their journey to examine it, which is this time in your 20s and early in your life where you have so much to discover about yourself and by extension the world itself?
Yes, well, that coming of age is a wonderful, I suppose, literary shape to inhabit when exploring these themes, because they are about expansion, self-discovery, knowledge, the forming of identity, of trying to figure out meaning. Yeah, and to some extent, the book explores meaning and how, in some ways, there isn't any. Yet some characters choose a structure through which to organize their meaning or meaning making, for example, through religion or through various forms of belief, and others who grapple with it in other ways, whether it's through pursuing an artistic life or honing in back on family or forging ahead in some other way, whether it's through job or finding the right person or through just battling on, really. So yeah, I was interested in all of that. Yeah, you're right. Coming of age is a really good narrative space and shape to explore those sorts of things.
It very much is. And there's one particular thing that I also want to ask about, which is like one particular part that I admired about the book, which is the art of not giving a straight answer. There is a lot of aching moments of kind of desire of characters wanting to express to themselves and how they feel to each other. And sometimes what is not said is as powerful or more so, even more so powerful than what is said. That's a balancing act. That's a balancing act to really kind of write. Tell me about like the art of not giving a straight answer to the reader. Because you know that.
The last half an hour showed I've perfectly demonstrated this. Surely. No, how do we not do? Well, human beings are infinitely flawed and complicated. I think there's no, I don't, I mean, I'm always looking at, it's just my training in academia, which is, I don't always recommend, to be honest, but you look at every angle, you exhaust every possibility to your own, which tests your own levels of sanity, really. So I wanted to explore that multiplicity, and there's never any straight answer. What you'll find in the book is that some ends are more neatly tied up than others. Life doesn't end up in this wonderful hopeful ending all the time. So no, I think life is brutal. It's often about desires unfulfilled, not always. Hopefully, I want everyone to fulfill their dreams and their hopes to be realized, but it doesn't always happen. It doesn't it doesn't go like that. And I don't always see that it's art's responsibility to solve all of that. So in a way, I've left some things unfinished and some things more tied up, I suppose. I do think, though, as authors, it's our responsibility to, I do think hope is nonetheless important. I didn't want to write a story. It's a tragic comedy. One reviewer said it was a tragic comedy. I think it is. I didn't want to write a story which left the readers without hope. I know that's a big, heavy-duty thing to say, that authors need to give us hope, because there'll be a wall of wailing authors telling me the opposite. But I think it's I think it's important. So
you've been with this book for a very long time. It has sat with you. It has traveled with you. It has been in your head. It's preoccupied a lot of space. Now that it is finished,
rub it in,
now
why
that
don't
it
you?
exists, yeah. Now that it exists and it's out there, I'm kind of curious. What did it teach you about anything?
Good question. I like thinking on the spot with these questions. What did it teach me? It taught me that I could write a book. It taught me that, that the characters taught me a lot. I was quite moved and inspired by them. They did things that surprised me. They were braver, more courageous than I would have thought. Than me, for example. Even characters who may not be that sympathetic. I was in some ways, impressed by that. The characters were things that I could never be and would never be. So I think that's what I learned there's a real vicarious pleasure you can obtain from that. You can have lives that you don't live, but that you can live through fiction. I know we're in an age now where there's a real encouragement for people to tell their own story, and I'm all for that. At the same time, for me to test my limits as an author, it really is to go into what isn't me, or what can I find of me in that which is just so different from me, and that challenge. And that was important to me. It's probably not quite the case anymore. That's really what an author's job is. So it taught me all of those things, and it was I just had wonderful fun. So it taught me that you can have an absolute ball. Hopefully people enjoy it too. I must say, I was in plays in my youth that we had a total party putting them on, and every kind of drama ensued, and it was the end of the world and it was the beginning of the world, and I don't know if the audience always enjoyed it, but it was sort of beside the point. We had a wonderful time. I hope this isn't like that. I hope readers do enjoy it. I imagine they will. I think readers who love complex characters, who like the theatre, who like to laugh, a bit of comedy, who don't mind sort of enter into that world of different voices, I think they will have a lot of fun.
Well, we'll finish off with a rapid fire part of the date, where I basically fling some questions at you, and you give me the first answer that comes to your head. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Prepare yourself. No, I'm sorry. The first question is about your reading habits and things like that. What is your favorite book that you've read in the last 12 months?
That's a real toughie. I really adored Sarah Harvey, the Booker Prize winner, Orbital, which I read on a train journey and was spellbound by the beautiful prose, exquisite, moving, delightful book. Really struck a chord with me. I also, some months ago, read Kate Krumik's Heartsease, which I think she's one of the most original voices in contemporary Australian literature. Just her writing is so just unusual and funny and wry, and really enjoyed that. Yes, and several other books that I can think of too. I think it's Peter Polides' God Forgets About the Poor was a wonderful read as well. Yeah.
Good numbers. I like him. Love enjoying big reading. Do you have a favorite debut that you've ever read? So I'm not talking in the last 12 months. I mean a book that you didn't realize was the way that author entered into literature, and you go, what the hell? How do you do that?
Well, I recently read Charlene Alsop's The Great Undoing. I think that was a lovely, wonderful, energetic, bracing, bold book that I thought, wow, that packs a punch, and that was like a pretty smashing debut. I love. I as a teenager, I enjoyed The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, because I thought that's an interesting debut. Spoke to me at that moment. But I don't know if you know Paul Auster's work, but City of Glass is a wonderful, slim book at the beginning of his trilogy, his New York trilogy, which I thought was a pretty amazing debut as well. So, yeah, there are a lot of wonderful debuts. I've read others too. They escape me because I'm reading all the time. So, yeah,
it's the right problem to have. I mean, I appreciate that you're shouting out Charlene, who had her on the podcast last year, and then got to meet her at the New Year Writers Festival.
all right.
Shout out Shout out Great Undoing. Honestly, a really, really, really good book that also has a lot of amazing stuff to say about the state of truth and history, particularly
Right.
when paired with a particular book by Ernest Scott called which is very much a key part of that story. So I strongly recommend you go and read that. Oh, or listen to the podcast we did with her. She's good. We
Yeah,
like her.
terrific. Absolutely terrific. Agree with that. Yeah.
I know outside of writing, you also have done some singing. You've
All right.
sung
Yes.
in different
Some.
ensembles. You've sung in Paris, in Perth, in Sydney. Do you have a particular style of singing that you naturally are like, this is my natural groove and what I get into? Or do you have a song that you like to turn to?
Oh, goodness me. What a question. I haven't sung for quite a few years. Wow, I didn't expect this question. What do I like to sing? It's extremely embarrassing and highly uncool, but I just adore musical comedy. So you give me anything from My Fair Lady or, Les Miserables, all that kind of thing. I will just, the whole thing. The cheesier, the better. Yeah, the more kind of schmaltzy and yeah, I'll sing it. I'll sing it full voice. Yeah, I won't do that to you now, though. I think I respect you too much to put you through that. So I won't.
Look, any sort of musical comedy or musical singing is people overhate. It's a hell of a lot of fun.
I love that, the golden age of Hollywood, and there's all those kind of movies from like between the 30s and the 50s where everybody's tap dancing and they're all like really stylish and they've got like shiny hair and they're like the men are in ties and I love that.
And they look fine. Everyone looks just like
dapper. Oh. They look dapper and schmick and elegant. The women are elegant.
Oh. Yes, there is a joy in those.
Who knows what was going behind the scenes, though? I'm sure it was quite the opposite. But anyway, sorry, I interrupted. Sorry.
No, it's good. You do like to. You mentioned that there's a particular area on the Central Coast that you really, really like to write in the Buddha Peninsula. Why is that particular place where the words just come out for you? Why that particular spot?
It's wonderfully wild there. There are almost no shops except for the Hardy Bay General Store down the road. I think it's something to do with the national park, the proximity of that beautiful wild bush, and just the sheer magnificence of the ocean there. It's such a moody ocean. Every day, the shore and the beach looks different. Some days it's sort of angry and there's just all this junk and debris and driftwood and interesting stuff all over the beach. And other days it is beautiful and pristine and meditative and magnificent. And I love watching the sky, walking along that coastal track, walking along the beach, walking to the beach from the shack. There's a beautiful little pathway through the dense forest that's full of brush turkeys and spiders and big ants that will bite you. And all of these creatures and birds and sounds and sort of scenery is really conducive to hearing voices, to hearing voices, and also to help you construct a story. Like I just find that they're all my friends. They're like my family. I want to hug them all, and all of that. It just comes with me somehow. Yeah, it's beautiful. I think even a book is recently written called The Rewilding. Now I haven't read it, but that is about the Booty National Park, and I'm not surprised that someone's written a book about it because it's a beautiful sacred bush. Do you know it, Nick? If being someone who lives up this way. No, I've only
because I only moved up to the Hunter at the end of 2022. So there's still a lot of undiscovered country that I need to go and explore.
There are beautiful.
And it sounds evocative.
There are beautiful echidnas there, and they're walking along the track, and we have this shared consciousness with creatures. I find, like birds in particular, and I mentioned angels before the podcast starts, but maybe these are our angels. I don't want to idealize nature because, of course, they all eat each other, and vomit each other up. But yeah, they're also angels to help you with your story.
I love it. I love it. Do you have a favorite word?
Favorite word. Okay. It changes regularly. I think it's a French word. I think it's croustillant, which means crunchy. I like it's quite onomatopoeic. So yeah.
French pronunciation can be so much fun. And I feel like that's really bad to say that, but like there's just some of the ways that they pronounce stuff is just like you really get into it.
I love the word grenouille as well, which is frog, the word for frog.
I love it.
It's a great word. You just want to keep saying grenouille and croustillant. Yeah. So they're my favorite words. Croustillant. It sounds like there's so much at stake when really all it means is crunchy, but hey. So, yeah.
My last question is, if there is one playwright from the same era that the play from the players came from, in the 1770s, the French environment, who do you think would you recommend? And do you reckon modern readers should kind of check that out? Who do you reckon that would be? Who would be a playwright you should direct them to?
A playwright of 17th century France.
Is
that the question? Apart from Pierre Beaumarchais?
Yes. I said it really badly.
I think there are quite a few great playwrights. They're not all from that century, though. Racine is wonderful. Corneille. Who else was writing then? I'd say that's they're the main ones that come to mind. There are quite a few French playwrights mentioned in the book and plays. So, yeah, the history of French theatre is very, very interesting and derives a lot too from the history of Italian theatre and the wonderful characters that emerged through Commedia dell'arte, which is from the Italian Renaissance. So, yeah, all of that's wonderful. We don't see or hear enough about it, really, but yeah, highly recommend.
Indeed. I love it. Thank you so much, Deborah. It's been so nice chatting to you on this podcast and talking about the players, which for everyone listening, it is published by Fremantle Press. It is out in the world now. It's been out for a little while. Go and get yourself a copy and dive into an incredible tapestry of complex relationships and amazing storytelling. Deborah, thank you so much. It's been so much fun having you on the show.
Thank you, Nick. And thank you for your wonderful questions and for reading my book and for your great podcast and for all you do for authors and the time you take to talk to them and think of them and the energy that you give them. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Date with a Debut and for listening to the Words and Nerds channel. You can buy all books mentioned in today's episode down in the description box, and if you enjoyed the show, drop us a review, leave us 5 stars or a thumbs up. It really helps the show out. If you want to hear episodes when they drop, be sure to subscribe to Words and Nerds, or you can subscribe to Date with a Debut on Podbean to hear the latest episodes as they drop. Want to support the show more? You can also subscribe to my Patreon in the description to get early access to episodes, book reviews, recommendations, and a whole lot more. Catch you soon! Date with a Debut is a Words and Nerds and Breathe Art podcast co-production.